Okay, in this project, we're going to take a look at what we call the RGB LED. So let's take a look at the drawing over here, the schematic that I've got here, and it's pretty simple. I've got my LED, and this is an LED that can change colors, as you can see it cycling through colors. We'll go through the program in a little bit, but the longest wire coming out of it of the four wires is the ground. And then the other wires are red, green, and blue colors that are controlled using the different channels. So again, you can see the black wire here. That's the longest one, goes into ground. And then I have red going into 6, green going into 5, and blue going into 3. Okay, and it's pretty simple, straightforward. Again, remember that you've got to have resistors going through into an LED so that it doesn't burn out. Okay, so the code that we're using is right here. Okay, we start up by basically defining variables, red, blue, green, as 3, 5, and 6 is shown there. We then go into our setup loop, or not loop, but our void setup routine, okay, where we basically set the pins initially to red, green, and blue, right, which are those variables again, so 3, 5, and 6, okay, set all of those pins to output, and then go ahead and start it where red is high and green and blue are low. Okay. Now, before we get into our maiden loop, we got a couple other variables that we're going to define. We got red value, green value, blue value. We'll talk about that as we go through. Okay. And then we're going to go into our main loop, which actually consists of other loops within it. So our main loop starts right here. We're going to have a delay time. So we set a variable to called delay time to 10. So anytime you see that, it's probably going to be 10 milliseconds, which is 100th of a second. Okay. We then take our variables, set red value to 255, green and blue to 0 and 0. And then we do this loop, okay? And what we have here is this is called a for loop, okay? And that loop goes, I is basically a counter, so we set it to 0. And then we say, okay, as long as it stays below 255, each time going through, make I go 1. So basically, I is going to go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, right? All the way up to 255. Okay. So it's going to go through this 255 times. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to decrease my red value by 1, noting that red value started at 255. So now this is going to be 254. And my green value is going to go up by 1. So basically, red value is going to drop, green value is going to rise 1 point each time we go through. And then what I do is I write those values to the corresponding pins. And then I wait 100th of a second and do it again. Okay, so over the course of 2.5 seconds, okay, this is going to slowly fade from a red to a green, right? Red is going to drop down as green pulls up, okay? And it might be a little tough to see on the picture, but that's essentially what's happening. Is there's a slow fade from red all the way to green. Okay. Now we're going to go into another loop. Before we do that, we're going to make sure we're set at, again, now my green value is at 255, red and blue are at 0. And it's going to do the exact same thing, but this time it's going to bring green down and blue up. So every time it goes through this 255 value situation here, green is going to drop down and blue is going to come up. Okay. And it's going to do that over the course of 2.5 seconds, right? Because it basically does this every 100th of a second, but 255 times. Now, blue is at its max. And what's going to happen is it's going to do the same thing, except blue is going to go down, red is going to go up. So I fade from red to green, green to blue, blue back to red, very slowly. And you can see that right here. So there's green, now it goes blue very shortly, and then ultimately it's going to go to red shortly before the green, back to blue. Now there's colors in between because when I get you know, 256 dropping down, 0 going up to 256. When I hit the middle of that, which would be about 128 each, then it's going to have what those two combine to form. So you'll like see a yellow somewhere in the middle of this, kind of a cyan. There's a yellow, right? So based on the different values, if these all go to 256, it's going to be bright white because that's all of the light being produced. So all that color turns to white. If all of them are 0, they're going to be off, right? If red's at 256, everything else is blue or 0, it's going to be red, right? And so on and so forth. And you can just play around with those different colors and things of the nature. But that's generally what's going on here is we're controlling the color of that. Each pin is somewhere between 0 and 255. Again, if they're all up, it's white. If they're all down, it's off. If only one is up, then it's red, it's green, or blue. If it's any combination of the others, it's going to be some other color, and you can play around with those colors. You can probably look in online and see what, you know, if you were looking for a specific color to make, you can do that. So that's how we control an RGB LED.